Hello everyone and welcome to our first interview question. This question is going to introduce our section on arrays, and this is just an easy array question. But this is a great question because it really helps us understand how arrays can show up inside of our interviews, as well as it gives us a good chance to walk through the process of how to tackle and answer these questions. This is also the exact interview question that Google has posted on their YouTube channel to demonstrate how they expect candidates to interview for their software engineering positions. Before we begin, I want to walk through how these questions are set up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the question and help you understand what the question is asking you to accomplish, and then we're going to walk through the different steps that I have laid out that best help you actually come up with the correct answer, but also interview in the best way during your technical interviews. So first, let's understand what the question is asking us. The question reads, given an array of integers, return the indices of the two numbers that add up to a given target. What this means is that we are going to receive two different arguments. The first is that we are going to receive an array of any number of different integers. Integers in this case mean that they're whole numbers. They are not decimal-based numbers. The next thing that we're going to receive as our second argument is a target, which is also an integer. We need to figure out what two numbers in the array, if they exist in the array, can add together to give us this target value. In this particular case, when we look inside the array, we see that the values 9 and 2 add together to give us the target value of 11. As per the question, we want to return the indices of these two numbers. And as we know with arrays, indices are going to be the values that represent the index of every value. These indices start from 0 for the very first value, and they increment by 1 for every subsequent value. What this means is that if the answer is 9 and 2, then what are the two indices we want to return? They're going to be the index numbers right underneath them, 3 and 4. So this means that the correct answer for this question is an array containing 3 and 4. So now that we understand what this question is asking us, how do we solve this question? Well, before you even start solving the question, you have to do this first step. And this is a very crucial step that your interviewer is expecting you to do, which is to verify the constraints. Now, what are constraints? Constraints are ways where you can understand the question better so that you know what kind of edge cases you need to consider, as well as all of the different variables that might impact how you solve the question. And this usually comes in the form of a dialogue, which means that you want to ask your interviewer certain questions in order for you to answer and figure out what these constraints are. So let's walk through some great questions for this exact question. The first question that we want to ask is, are all of the numbers positive or can there be negatives? This is a great question to ask when you're working with integers, because depending on whether or not the integers are positive or negative, this changes the approach and the solution that we come up with. In this particular case, though, our interviewer may say to us that all of the numbers are positive. Don't worry about negatives. So this means that the array we receive, we guaranteed that everything is positive. We will never receive an array that contains any negative integers at all. The next question we might ask is, are there duplicate numbers in the array? Meaning, are all of the numbers inside the array we receive unique, or can there be duplicates? In this particular case, we'll say no, there are no duplicates. So this means that when we receive the array, we don't need to account for what happens if the numbers are duplicated. We will never receive a possible array where any of the numbers occur more than once. Another good question that we want to ask is, will there always be a solution available? Meaning, given the array and the target, will we always be able to find two numbers in the array that will add up to this target? Here, the most common answer to this question is no. There may not always be a solution. So the code solution that we come up with needs to be able to figure out whether or not there actually exist two numbers in that array that add up to the target. So this means that we can receive a target of 25. But we might receive an array where no two values add up to 25. But this is not the only possible edge case that this can occur. We might also receive an empty array. In an empty array, there are clearly no values that will add up to 25. Similarly, because we're looking for a pair as per the question, if we receive an array which only has one value, this can also never produce a correct answer for this question. So this is a great question to ask in any question case when we're doing our interviews. A good follow-up to this will be, what do we return if there is no solution? Do you want us to return -1? Do you want us to return an empty array? What do you want us to return? Here, they'll say just return null in this particular case. It's really up to your interviewer to determine what they want you to return if there is no solution. But this just demonstrates that you're thinking about all these edge cases and you're giving that onus on the actual person that's giving you the task to figure out what the constraints are in this particular case. So another question we can ask is, can there be multiple pairs that add up to the target value? Here we'll say, no, only one pair of numbers will add up to the target given. What this means is that if we're given the target of 11, we'll expect that only 2 numbers in the array will add up to this value. We'll never receive an array where there's multiple pairs that add up to that target. So in the first one, we see that only 9 and 2 add up to 11, whereas in that second array, we see that there's 9 and 2, but there's also 7 and 4. So we don't need to worry about our solution coming up with a case where we need to consider multiple potential solutions. So now that we understand all of these different constraints that we verified through these questions, we want to be able to combine them all together into different test cases. Test cases are just different combinations of the inputs that we could receive. So different combinations of the array and the target that we could get that will best capture all of these different edge cases that our solution wants to account for. This is a process that you can work with your interviewer on, where you ask them, is it okay if we come up with some test cases together that best capture these different questions that you've helped me answer for our constraints? This is what we're going to do together in the next video, but I want you to think about some of these different test cases that could occur from the different constraints that we've just answered. So once you've done that, join me in the next video and let's write out some of these test cases together.